Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist. Today I'm going to be teaching a class, very simple and easy for beginners. This is the example here. So in just a moment, we'll be switching camera views to an aerial view so that you can see everything that I do up close, but I did want to give you a little look into my studio at the beginning. So this is where I do a lot of my fine art painting, and then it's also where I teach classes for beginners online. So again, this is our little visual, and we do sell painting kits online at tipsyartist.com. We give you all the supplies that you need. So basically what happens is when you order it, this class of course is online, and then all the supplies are in there. You just open it up, and all you have to do is get water, and everything else is in the box, and you're ready to go. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch camera views. Let's see here. Okay. Awesome. All right, so this is all set up and ready to go. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about the tracing process. So you do not have to know how to draw. That is wonderful news for beginners. And so this traceable comes with the kit, and then the transfer paper does, and the canvas. This is a 9x12 canvas. And let's talk about how to apply this first. So we just center this transfer paper, and I only tape up at the very top here. So I want to make sure that I leave all of this free and open so that I can lift up and check my work as I trace. And when you place the transfer paper down on the canvas, you want to make sure that the shiny black side faces the canvas and the dull gray side faces up. Then I go ahead and just center the traceable on top. And you can see here, we'll give a little bit of a close. Tape here, tape here. So I taped the transfer paper down first, got that centered, and then I taped this second. And so very simple there. And then we've got a pencil in our kit here, and we're just going to start tracing right over the top. So I will say, as reference to here, these are little clouds. This is definitely a very painterly part of the process. The daisies are also very painterly. The brush does a lot of the work. So some of this stuff is optional in terms of what you trace. Some people do not want that hard line of the cloud on there, and some people kind of forget what's out that reference in there. For this class, we're going to go ahead and trace it just so it's there. But I did want to mention up front that that is certainly an option to trace the clouds, because we do create that with the brush, and really the trace is not that necessary, but I do like to give you the option. So that little reference there. Have a few little sweet butterflies up in the sky here. Again, just one simple line through that existing line stroke is all that is needed. And I will tell you too, another little helpful hint to kind of see where you've been. You can kind of shift the light a little bit, and you'll be able to see the graphite reflect. Just a little bit there. And then, of course, as mentioned before, you can also just lift up and check your work this way too. Let's give you a closer look so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So it just looks like pencil line on that surface area. And again, it's really important to make sure and check your work whenever you are done, because it's just nearly impossible to line all this back up once you've lifted this off of your canvas. So you just want to really double check, make sure you get all the detail work in place first. I'm gonna use a mason jar. Let's kind of see, this is like a little puff of light. This is the grass that's kind of showing through. Since the glass is translucent. Let's check. All right, looking good so far. All right, and then this is going to be all of our little daisies here. You can see how simple this is. And then we have little references of grass. These are just simple little blades of grass. This will end up getting covered up with paint, but it does provide a little bit of comfort initially, just to give you a reference of space and where things are. And so it is really important to make beginners feel comfortable with this project. All right. And of course, since this is going, you'll see eventually this is going to be a top process of using the brush to make those elements. So we can always add more daisy very easily, but that gives you a close-up look of what that looks like. All right, I'm doing one more quick peek, make sure I've got all. It's important to get the main shape. So main shapes would be our mason jar and all of our butterflies. So I've got 4 here, 3 in the jar, so we're good there. Okay. All right. So now we can go ahead and remove this. Just carefully lift that off the back. Put this off to the side. I will say you're welcome to reuse this a few times with different things. If you want to experiment, you just want to, change direction, it should work just a couple other times with some different designs for you. So that's just a little, I don't save mine, but you're welcome to save yours. Okay. Now your kit comes with a permanent marker. I recommend outlining some of the elements. It bleeds through the paint. It gives beginners a lot of confidence that certain shapes are definitely kept intact. So I don't want to do everything that, like, I definitely don't want to do the clouds because those are so translucent in the sky. We don't want this hard black line. So, but this is going to be fine here for our mason jar. So this is going to be nice to have this work with the heavy line. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the butterflies too. And I'm not going to do the daisies in the grass just because this light pencil line is really all that we need as a reference. And if it gets any darker, it can be a little bit difficult to contend with in terms of the lightness of the paint over the top, but we don't want that hard black line showing through, but it works perfectly for these elements here. Really nice. Let's do these little butterflies up here. And also this makes it a lot easier for you to see this. I have a lot of bright studio light coming in on the surface area. And so this all gets a little washed out. And that's much easier for y'all to see. All right. So we've got your paint kit. Yours will be brand new. I'm reusing two of my other missing ones here. There's plenty of paint usually left over after one paint, so that's good news for y'all. Little paint plate here, got a little bit of work ahead with some titanium white and some Mars black. Now, one of the things you'll want to know is, yeah, there's one. Titanium white, Mars black there. When you do go to open these up for the first time, there will initially be a silver lining there right on top. You'll have to lift that off on each one of these. And these are acrylic paint. They do set up and dry fairly quickly. So every time you get done squirting out some paint here, you want to make sure and recap. And that will help save your paint for many more uses. All right. And then we've got our water, our brushes. Let's talk about our brushes really quick. We have our little family of brushes. We've got Mama. Then we have Little Buddy. And then we have Little Bit. All right. And then whenever you're using your brushes, whenever you get done with one, always make sure, if you don't have time to wash it immediately, just let it rest in the water at the very least, because acrylic paint will set up and dry in your brushes fairly quickly. And if you don't get it rinsed out in time, then it can just turn your brushes into sticks, and those are not very helpful to paint with. So yes, again, just either put it in the water until you get a chance to wash it, or just wash it immediately. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with our beautiful sky here in the background. Since your brushes are new, I would recommend going ahead and pushing them into the water a little bit, getting them nice and flexible, a little bit moist. I'm going to do a little dab here on my napkin. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab some primary cyan blue. Let's do a little dime size amount there. So I'm going to take Mama, I'm going to use her kind of like a scoop here. I'm going to lift up and just grab a little dollop of paint. I'm going to have a little touch of that blue. We're going to mix that together. It's going to create a beautiful light sky blue. That's lovely. Now, if you want to add just a hint, sometimes I love adding just almost like a little hint of a turquoise to my sky. This is some Viridian. It's a beautiful color, one of my favorites. I'm going to do a tiny little pea size amount here. And I'm just going to add a little touch of this as well to my sky. Because I love that little hint of turquoise in there. I just love it. All right, I'm going to add a little touch of water. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just lightly push this back and forth, nice horizontal strokes here. A little bit of water will help extend that paint. And let me bring this a little closer. So if I do this, you can see how it kind of gets that dry brush look. And the cures for that are, of course, more paint, also a little bit of water. And that really helps that paint flow into the pores of the canvas. All right, as I'm going over my butterflies here, I want to make sure, kind of see how they're going to start to bleed through. So we're still going to have that shape in place. But just in case, if you feel like it's making you nervous and you can't see them anymore, add a little bit of water there and that'll help make it a little bit more translucent over that shape. And I'll show you, it definitely bleeds through to where you're going to be able to still see them. In the water here as we go ahead and let this beautiful kind of turquoise blue completely cover the background. A little bit more. And you can see where I've added the water and that nice transparent feel to it. I can even still see a faint line of that graphite line for that cloud reference behind there. I think that's also encouraging if you're concerned about losing your cloud shapes. But even if they do get completely covered up, I'm going to teach you how to place those clouds into the background. And honestly, that cloud reference in there as a trace is really not essential at all. Because we're going to recreate that look with a stroke of the brush. Nice, long, gentle sweeps across our canvas here. And it's really beneficial to have this blue sky flow through the shape of that mason jar. It's really a nice cheat because you've got the translucent quality of the mason jar and the sky showing through in the background. It's looking great. Keep going, good job. And don't forget about the water, it really helps spread the paint across the surface area. And I realize this is going to be green grass down here, but it provides a nice background. This is one layer of paint in the background that creates some nice depth. And my flowers are also bleeding through, even though they're just graphite. I'll bring that closer so you can see. Just make sure you got enough water in your paint to make it translucent over those shapes, to where you still have that hint of color, but you still see those shapes peeking through. All right, so we have a gorgeous background now. It's quite lovely. And again, we do not want this paint to set up and dry on this brush. So we're going to go ahead and rinse out immediately. So when we go to wash our brushes, we're going to go ahead and do some firm pressure, spin the brush round and round and round. That will help release the paint. Let's go ahead and try it. Okay, so I'm going to spin this paint around just a little bit here. I'm going to be using my little bit brush. We're going to go ahead and touch into some titanium white. And a few of these clouds, I can kind of still see the reference that I have. But basically, I get a nice loaded up brush here with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of lightly drag this across. And then as I get towards the end, I kind of lift off with a light hand. Add a little bit of a thickness up here. And go up. And then just kind of lightly drag it across. And where you want the paint to be a bit more opaque, you want to hold your brush a little bit more out to the side, parallel to the canvas. I'll give a more opaque layer of paint. And then as I lift off at the edge of the cloud, I'm just going to lift off on pressure. So just lift off with a very gentle hand and just gently lift off the canvas there. A little cloud here. It's almost like you make tiny little triangular shapes a little bit. They kind of peak a little bit up here. We're just lightly dragging that brush across the canvas. And it's still slightly wet with the blue, so the white's kind of softly blending in with that. Light drags across there. So this clouds kind of sweep through the sky. Might feel a little peak there, and then it might be drag off. Light, gentle hand. We've got another one right here. Just very light, gentle strokes across here. And then we'll do that little peak. Like a short, squatty little triangle. Gently taper that off. Here. And you can do little textural taps too. Just tap, tap, tap on the side of the brush. Give a little bit of cloud texture here. And then we go to taper off, just kind of twirl the brush a little bit and then gently lift it. Just do a little tap, tap, tap on these to give a little of that texture. With a little side taps. And let's go and twirl the brush. And lift off the light hand. Twirl and lift off. Let's do that with tap, tap, tap. This little flag kind of peeks behind that little butterfly there. Tap, tap, tap. Gentle taper off to the side. Then let's come back into these and add a little bit more of that tap texture there. Tap, tap, tap. And every time I do this, my clouds definitely change shape a little bit. They don't have to be exactly the same every time. Clouds are always different. All right, so we've got some fun little cloud activity happening there. It's quite lovely. Right. One cloud here. Right, I'm going to go ahead and work in some of that beautiful darker blue with the butterflies. So I rinsed out my little bit brush. We're going to go ahead and mix a little bit of this primary cyan blue and the Viridian. Right, equal parts there. And if you want to lighten this up, you can do a little touch of the white. Right now I'm going to do a little twirl into the paint. And a little bit of water to that too, to make it a bit more fluid, easier to manipulate and move. And we're just going to do some nice little touches here into the shape. So with this, you want to hold the brush more like a pencil to be able to manipulate it. And then where the shape of the butterfly wing ends here, I'm just going to do a little tiny touch of black in here too. A little black for the body here in the center, really touching the line. And then I'm going to go ahead and kind of touch a little bit of black around the edge here. I'll shadow that in. I'm going to lose that shape of the wing. A little bit more water to that black to make it more fluid. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and do like enough of those wings, do the outside reference before I go ahead and look at blue. I'll just make it the same. One other step I will mention here is that, and this can make it easier on you, you will have to let it completely set up and dry, but if you want, you can let this completely dry, the whole sky we just did, and you can actually use your permanent marker to make a nice hard black line again over the mason jar and the butterflies over the top, and that also can help you a lot too. Or you can just paint it on. Bottom there, and then the side wing. Let's keep going about a little bit more water to the black. I'm going to twirl the head of the brush into the paint. It'll be a nice fine point. I'm going to rinse out, so I want to work back into that blue I created. Clear water, clean brush. This is that Viridian and primary cyan blue with a tiny touch of white. Basically just working this beautiful color into each little wing here. And we do have a color mixing chart in each kit, each kit. And so basically you are welcome to completely be creative and do your own thing and actually just do a different color too. So you could do, red or pink, or all kinds of beautiful colors for the butterflies. You don't have to do this one color. There are all kinds of beautiful colors for butterflies. kind of a little bit more Viridian and more white. Okay, just keep filling in those little wings with that color. So we'll do a little, almost feels like a little push and then a pull into that shape. So load up the brush, kind of push down and then pull, push down and then pull. I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of water and I'm gonna go back into my black here. I'm just going to retouch a little bit those little center lines. So a little bit of emphasis there. A little bit of a soft curve to that. A little bit of a soft curve there. You can kind of redefine those wings too. Looking good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and, well, I've got the black in hand and the little bit brush. I'm gonna go ahead and outline our mason jar here. And definitely want to make sure there's some water in there. Twirl the head of the brush out so you get a nice fine point. And it feels like you do a little tiny parentheses here on the edges. All the way down. Goes in a little bit and then back out and pulls all the way down. And we're going to add a little bit of white to the black. We have the dark charcoal gray. So some water. Swirl the head of the brush into that paint. And then we're going to go over those lines again. Nice and sharp. Can you soften those up a little bit? So again, I'm just going over it one more time with the charcoal gray. We're just a little clean up here. Back into that light blue next, and just doing little lines and through here, a little bit of white. Just light drags of that, and a little bit of white here, and follow the curve of that. Put more of that white, a bit of water. And we're going to start to make some reflective light come down on the glass here. Just follow down the same shape all the way down. Just kind of echo. Well, I've got that little bit of white. I'm also going to do just, you can do little tiny touches of accents there on your butterfly. It's kind of an option. Or you can just leave it just so there. It's just an option. Now we're going to go ahead and start to work in some grass. So I'm going to be using my Cadmium Green. Do a nice big quarter-size dollop of that. I'm going to pull that to the camera a bit closer. So there's my Cadmium Green. And I'm going to add, let's see, a little bit of some bright yellow green. Hello, honey bear. My honey bear just got up.
Wow.
It's very early in the morning here. All right, so I'm going to take my mama brush. I'm going to mix these two together. It's quite lovely. You can add a little bit of white to that too if you want. And then we're going to start to make some grass. All right, so as I mentioned, these daisies are more reference. We're going to actually end up probably covering up most of those. But don't worry because they're so easy and fun to make. It's not even a big deal. But when we start to make our grass, we just pull straight up from the base here and just do short little strokes all the way up. And then you can make some of it a little bit darker if you want. I'm going to come back in and add a little bit more of that cadmium green. Little presses in there where you can have little strokes of that darker green mixed in. And if you want a little bit of white, you can add lighter strokes, kind of push little highlights in through the grass. And we're going to be going ahead and just covering all of this down here at the base. And if you have a problem with dry brush, don't forget to add a little bit of water. That'll help really cover in there and get it all covered. So, but this is a really fun little stroke in here, very therapeutic, just little tiny pushes. So I'm gonna steer clear of the mason jar for just a second, then we'll start talking about how to cut in around it. But you have to be a little bit careful with how we do this. So I just came back in, by the way, and has a little bit more of that bright yellow green, the cadmium green. And I'm gonna keep pushing this through here. Short little strokes. And when you get done with the stroke again, just lift off with a light hand. All right, so I'm getting close to that mason jar, so I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to come in right next to it. And you can have a little bit of that grass kind of coming over the top because it's sitting in the grass, so a little bit coming in over the top will not hurt. But for the most part, you want to be careful and kind of just get right next to it. And then once inside here, then you want to go ahead and continue on with that grass. So I'm gonna need to switch over to a little bit of a smaller brush. Finished doing. Go ahead and let mama rest in there. I'm gonna take my little buddy brush and we're just gonna hold it like a pencil and kind of go around this curve here. Gonna get that paint in and around. And even if it touches into a little bit of that wet black and adds a little bit of that black into it, that black will mix well with the green. Then I come around, just a little butterfly here. And get good coverage in and around it. And then I'm gonna come back in. Once I've got that smoothness, I don't want that smoothness to be what still is on top. So I'm gonna come back in with more texture. And I'm gonna tap into those colors and just do those little tiny short strokes over the top. So you're basically seeing the grass behind the glass here. And again, remember, we can have a little bit of this coming in over the top. As it is sitting in the grass. A little bit of that's okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out. And I'm gonna come back in with my little bit brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit more of that white, and I want this reflective light to come back in over the top again. Stop it right here. Just kind of echoing a little more of that white. It's a soft dry brush now. Very gentle hand. And no white accents there. And of that white drag just right over the top, and a dry brush too there, just kind of softens it a little bit. Kind of touch there and here. Softens this up a little bit. Looking for that white dry brush over the black to soften it. Little line just drags across there and here, just a lot of drag, because that butterfly is actually inside the jar, kind of peeking through. So white dry brush of that white right on top. Oh, that's really sweet. Okay, so now we're gonna do our little tiny daisies. So break that a little bit. Got plenty of white still left over, and then I'm also going to make sure that I've got some primary yellow. So with a touch of the brush, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I've got a lot of white here. on the breath. And I basically just do a touch, just like that. That's how I do these daisies. So I told you it was easy, and it certainly is. So you just touch. Yeah, key is lots of paint on the brush and touch down. It's very textural, and that makes your little petals. And you can also, let's try that. So that's a really fun look. So you can vary your petals. So if you want them to be a little bit more thin and delicate and to do more of them, you can. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. And then you can do that little touch of yellow right in the center. Just gonna grab a big dollop of it and touch down right through there. I'm going to go ahead and use Little Buddy to finish out more of the consistent look that I have here. So just touch into that white and then just touch down. And I just do it 4 times. And I definitely turn my brush to a different angle. So this is Little Buddy and then just dipped in white and then just pressed in. Let the brush do the work. You can just sprinkle these all around your little fields here. So press and then light, gentle hand lift off. Then we even add a few more flowers in this one that I have here. You can definitely, don't be too bound to the model. Have fun with it. Be creative. You can do different colors of flowers too if you want. Go ahead and let that sit in the water. Now I'm going to take a little bit. I'm going to pick up a nice big dollop of that primary yellow every single time and just touch a little bit of that into the center. Very textural. Nice thick dot right in the center. So again, touch into the yellow and then light touch down. All right, so cute. All right, I'm gonna rinse out. I'm gonna come back into that darker cadmium green here. A little twirl into it. And then make a little reference of those little stems and do a little swish there. Let's do some Viridian. I need mine to be a little bit darker. I still have that cadmium on there, but I'm going to mix it in with that Viridian, make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to do a little swish. That reference of that stem. So it's just a little pull and then lift off of the right hand. Push and then pull. And then you can kind of drag that same darker color a little bit up through your grass just to add a little bit of shadow. And then you can come back in with that cadmium green and you can soften that, blend it in a little bit more if you want. All right, I'm going to give you an example of, this is all mostly, yeah, pre-set up and dry. So I'm going to give you another example too, of, especially as a beginner, something you might want to do to help you with details, especially if you struggle with a steady hand. So you can take the permanent marker when you're done, when this is all set up. The key is make sure it's dry, because if the paint's still wet and it touches the permanent marker, it'll just kill your permanent marker and you won't be able to use this anymore. And that's kind of sad, especially with a brand new permanent marker. So I just make sure it's dry, it'll be all good. But you can come in and do this little touch of the permanent marker. I just want to give you an example of what that kind of looked like, to where it can be a little bit more precise, to allow you to work in those details there. So, you know, you may not like the look of that. You might like the look of it more painted, but I just want to give you a little touch and let you see what that looks like in there. And then, of course, you can also sign with this too. It's a lot easier to sign with. And then let's see, I'm just going to take another little look-see. But it looks really great. This is our beautiful little field with daisies and butterflies and a mason jar. And so we've got it all done. So you can just sign your masterpiece. This is a very easy painting for beginners. Very simple, very easy. All right, so that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today, and y'all have a wonderful, beautiful day. We'll see you soon. Toodles.